Excited about today and the opportunity that you and I have to be able to talk about both homeopathy and your Alaskan essences. Having worked with you, with your essences and with you for the last 10-12 years, at the first seminar I came to down in Hampshire
Right.
for the Alchemy of the Heart,
Yep.
and being introduced to the Alaskan essences and that wonderful 3-tier system that you do, and realising how much I could bring in your essences as a support to some of the homeopathic remedies that I was prescribing, and how it's evolved over those last 10-12 years, the way I use some of your Alaskan essences alongside the homeopathic remedies.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I'm very pleased to be here as well to speak with you. I've admired your work for a long time. And you were instrumental in opening my awareness to the possibilities of using the essences with homeopathy. I think it was one of the first classes that I gave in this country that you attended, and some of the other people from the Lakeland College that straightened me out right away on here's what's possible with these two modalities.
You're right. I remember that actually at that class that you did, the Alchemy of the Heart, I remember you actually saying there was quite a group of us from the Lakeland College and of homeopathy, and I remember very much you saying you cannot mix homeopathy with the essences, and we were going,
wait a minute, yeah,
we can.
Because that was my understanding coming out of the U.S. You know, the standard traditional approach. Yeah. And so yeah, I put my foot in my mouth, and got it sorted right away. So it was great.
What I began to find with some of, and I know that you've had homeopathic remedies long before coming over and teaching that actual seminar. That you would find that sometimes those remedies would be quite strong. Was that a good way of explaining it?
Yeah.
And what I also found it very fascinating to hear your views on it, because very often with homeopathy we can sometimes think that something has to get worse before it gets better, and that's the beauty of what I've found working with your essences alongside or actually with the remedies, is that this can make the person feel very, very safe, very almost like cocooned-like, and that they can move through stuff, whether that be physical symptoms or emotional or mental emotional symptoms. They can move through stuff so much, faster than but to feel safe as well.
Yeah, and much more gracefully.
Gracefully, that's
yeah.
Well.
I mean, I had a couple of experiences that I knew it was the right remedy. I knew that I needed to be going from point A to point B, and the remedy was helping me go there, but it wasn't. I knew from having used the essences before that it didn't have to be that difficult. Physically, it didn't have to be that difficult. And so yeah, I mean, that really opened so many doors or windows of awareness to how to do that.
So can you do any particular remedies come to mind that way back that you knew of at all, that you'd heard people take, or that you'd even tried yourself for some of the first aid ailments that we do?
Well, I mean, I'd used arnica and that kind of thing, the things that are very easily available in the United States and the health food shops and whatever. But I was given Aurum at a very high potency, and that just mopped the floor with me, so to speak. And it was after that experience, because that homeopath, who is an excellent homeopath, said, here's what you can and cannot do while you're working with me. And he gave me the list, which included not taking any flower essences. And that was so hard, it was so difficult for me to not do that, because I knew, in sort of instinctually, I knew that there was a support there that I wasn't being able to use. And it was just a matter of learning how to use it. I can understand without that awareness, knowing what was possible, it would never come up. So, I mean, one of my questions to you is, what would you say to a homeopath that has been trained because it wasn't that how you were trained originally, as more of a traditional approach?
I was trained from a very classical
approach.
A very classical approach of homeopathy, we often call it. And so yes, I was taught to even prescribe homeopathy singly as well as. Certainly, I don't feel in maybe where we are in the UK that there's been a thing of not being able to mix them. I think even way back then, we would often say to take some of the rescue remedies that you can buy from our shops for emergency, times of stress and panic and those kind of things to ease the situation. But for talking to somebody who has any resistance or any hesitation about combining anything, whether it be combining homeopathic remedies or combining essences with the remedies, to me, I would be wanting to work with the fear around that, or the where has the belief system come from? Where has it been? And coming to the two remedies that you talked about, firstly, if I bring up arnica, so arnica that we use for bruising, for trauma, for shock. Arnica has this wonderful ability to be able to help. We can see bruises, it can work with the blood capillaries very well, but also giving it to a young child who has just fallen, a toddler who is just beginning to learn to walk and then falls down 2 or 3 steps, and giving an arnica when they're in a high state of screaming and fright, fear, what's just happened. And you can see them instantly calm down. So arnica is a beautiful one for us to really see homeopathy working at its best. But again, these times of trauma and things, that's one of the first remedies I remember bringing in a couple of your essences. And the first one that came to mind was actually combining it with cotton grass. Cotton grass, maybe I should pass it back to you to talk a little bit about, but it was the beautiful fluffy balls, and the way you described cotton grass, that I felt going in at yet another vibration of energy, really, to come in, and so that we are working on every single level that we can work with to help somebody through a shock or trauma.
And cotton grass is a perfect example from the Alaskan system, because it is coming in and actually doing a bit of absorbing. It's sort of energetically absorbing the difficulty or the pain, obviously, but also the word that I learned, about what happens when you take a homeopathic remedy and you have a difficult experience is aggravation. And maybe I heard about it in different ways than it would be spoken of over here. But cotton grass is perfect for any kind of aggravation, because it meets you in that soft, fluffy, sort of like the picture of having all these cotton. We call them cotton balls in this country. You call them, for taking makeup off and that kind of thing.
It's cotton wool.
Cotton wool. And imagine having like a big container full of those, and you're just sort of falling back in that. And it would just be that cushion and that fluffiness and that absorption. And then after you've gotten over that initial sort of arnica-like, application or pain, then it stays with you and helps you learn the lesson of, why did you have to, have that experience, or what's that experience about? What have you learned from that, and what do you need to learn from that? So it's a perfect cooperative component to the whole thing.
Yes. And following on, just before I want to go back and talk about the aurum in a minute, but following on from the cotton grass, one of the other essences that I love to give alongside that, when there has been maybe a fall of some sort, or even possibly even after an operation, but where there's been sprains, strains, stiffness, and that kind of thing, is dandelion. And dandelion, to me, again, to help with, along with giving homeopathic remedy like arnica, but also with our rooters and our rustoxes, which are for sprains and strains, the ankle turning over and things like this. The dandelion seems to have this wonderful ability to release the tension where they are, which is again, working exactly like Rustox will do homeopathically, but I feel we're going in at this, it's this support structure that I love, the way I combine with my homeopathic remedies, but also incorporating the Alaskan essences too.
Yeah, and then dandelion, again, I mean, cotton grass and dandelion, I think, would be sort of generally at the top of the list for that kind of thing. And the dandelion is also working with a couple other pieces of that. One being the tension that was there before the strain and or the muscle spasm or whatever it might have been, happened in many cases because there was tension that was slowly building up over time. And the idea with dandelion is you can use it preventatively to sort of get more cushion in your life. You have a stressful life, you have a lot of stress, stressful events or things that cause tension in the body, but to actually be using dandelion proactively instead of reactively, that you can actually get to the point where I'm not having as many strains, or I'm not pulling that muscle as much as I used to, or this is not happening because I'm catching the tension before it gets to that point of causing pain.
So can you follow that on forward, that if somebody is, for instance, they have a back that they had an accident with maybe, or it just went so many years ago, and they're beginning to notice maybe that the back can start to cause them pain again, maybe at times of high stress or emotional stuff going on in their lives, and then actually something like dandelion along with the cotton grass, and possibly even bringing in some arnica and the rooters, that can help maybe stop that repetitive action happening. So working more holistically, because we're bringing in the reasons for maybe why they felt stressed in the first place.
Yeah. So the cotton grass and the dandelion can both be used for that reoccurring pain or repetitive injuries, hitting the same knee over and over again. Because it's the dandelion on the one side is improving the body communication. So you're communicating on a more conscious level with the parts of your body that are storing stress. Learning why that's so. Why is that part storing stress and not another part? What are the holding patterns, in other words? And then, again, being able to be more proactive and say, well, before I would wait until my shoulders were almost up to my ears before I would notice that stress, and now I'm noticing when it first starts to happen. And just being a better caretaker, of the body in that way. And then the cotton grass, again, is going to the lesson level, the issue level, and saying, this is why this is still happening. This is why this is being hurt again. Why you're banging this up again. And then, getting that awareness, getting that insight. Eventually you realize, you look back and you go, I haven't hit my knee for several years now. Yeah. So you finish that cycle, you've got what it was, and you've moved on.
As you're saying that as well, that's bringing up another homeopathic remedy that I will often bring in with this kind of thing. More so maybe if I feel that there's been some nerve pain in these situations. But when we're looking at when someone can become aware of why their repetitive injuries can come back, is that sometimes it can be linked to emotional stuff, things that have happened in their lives. And a lovely remedy that we have that can really help release that, and it's also a nerve remedy, is Ignatia. And Ignatia we use it as a grief remedy, but it's a remedy that we often have, it's to help release emotional sadness, whether it be something that we keep silent within us, and then we can hold maybe that pain within our physical tissue as such. So Ignatia is one that I would use an awful lot with things, with all your essences, but in that particular instant, it comes to mind.
Sort of like quiet suffering, just not going on about it. But
it can be quiet suffering, but also Ignatia has got this emotional part where you can keep things silent, but it's not suppressed. It's not that you're pushing it down. It's almost that maybe either someone is saying, you shouldn't really be, we don't do that kind of thing. We don't express that kind of thing. And so that's the way you feel that you should be doing it. Or, yes, and then what can happen from that is that you can start to feel these, you can get emotional about things that maybe you don't think are being, you should be emotional about. So, for instance, you could be working in a job that you feel you're not being valued enough, and you're not being possibly paid as much as maybe you think you're worth, or that the person sitting next to you is getting paid or whatever, and then your assessment comes up, your yearly assessment. You could go in and see your boss, and you're all geared up, and as soon as you open your mouth, you start to cry.
Right.
That's a big Ignatia symptom, and you're furious with yourself because you wanted to be strong and do these things, and your voice starts to do that quiver. The lump comes in the throat. These are all Ignatia symptoms.
Okay.
And so when we're looking at a lot of your essences, which are about release, to me they're release, whether it's physical, mental or emotional, Ignatia is so beautiful to give with some of these ones because we see it as a throat release. Now, I know I've talked about nerve pains and things like that, but the letting go can often happen where one of the other big symptoms of the remedy picture that we see in Ignatia is the sigh. They have a big sigh.
Okay.
And that's a letting go. And often that can be releasing right back to cellular tissue, which we can hold and can manifest as pain and those kind of things. But moving on to Aurum, which is the other remedy that you talked about. Now, just a little bit about Aurum. Aurum we see as a remedy for depression, sadness, darkness. The light's gone out. And one of the biggest keynotes, one of the biggest things that we're looking for, excuse me, in Aurum is someone who feels he's let someone else down or she has let someone else down. So it can be a scenario of a relationship breakup, or it can be someone who had built a huge, built his home, and then the job goes, or the company goes bankrupt, and he feels that he's let down his family. And of course, very much nowadays, that can be she as well.
Yeah.
It can work very much both ways. Many years ago, we often looked at Aurum as being quite a male remedy, but now, with where we are now, it's used widely for all sorts of people because there is so much of this kind of thing happening at the moment. So it's a big remedy for that. And again, I would call this a really big remedy for our hearts, where we hold pain, sadness, feel we've let others down. So we can imagine the emotions that are coming up with here. We've got possibly guilt coming in, shame. And what Aurum will do is they will often retreat in and become, the picture we often see is they sit in their chair watching TV all day, and they've stopped communicating really with the outside world. It's just this is a big picture of a black depression. We can give it in other things, but this is painful stuff. Yeah. I think they're going through a lot of painful stuff, and so it immediately, when I think of the remedy Aurum, I'm wanting to bring in essences around this remedy because it's vulnerable. I feel we're in a vulnerable space here in the heart. So, I mean, I have some essences that immediately come to mind, but I don't know if there's any that jump into yours.
Well, several. I mean, in gold, although it's not strictly a stone or a heart remedy, but as you were talking, I mean, that's the best explanation I've had of Aurum. But the gold is in many ways, the positive side of all of that. So it's that sense of inner light to counteract the depression, and it's that sense of empowerment and just feeling really strong in oneself, and that I have value, and that it's a value that's not based on doing, on action, but it's a value just based inherently. You are on the planet in a body, therefore you have value. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're unemployed. It doesn't matter if you have a job that you don't like or like. Of course, you're going to always want to work with a creative process to create better things for yourself, but it's something that could just sit there and, just looking at a picture of gold or, not everybody has gold sitting around in their house, but just looking at a picture of it will have that same effect. That it's
it's also bringing a
valuable.
light back, isn't it?
Bringing
Really,
light back.
because the light's often been turned off.
And it has this amazing history down through the ages. Just it's always been something that's been valued. It's never lost its values.
Yeah.
So it's finding that hidden value in the person and just really lifting them up and keeping them in this place. And it actually does include the heart, because the creative process, in my understanding, in terms of how the energy runs through the energy system, is it's an upward energy. So it's rising from the creative source, coming from the earth, and then rising up through the solar plexus, which gold very much works on, to just sort of free that whole expansive breathing, allowing the creative power to be there, and then expressing that through the heart.
Yeah.
So gold is one of the remedies that we have one of the essences that we have in the Go Create formula, that is really saying, bring it up to the heart, express it through the heart, which is also, coming through the hands and manifesting it that way.
Wow.
So yeah, it's interesting just to hear the different sides of gold.
Yeah, yeah. And actually following on, because I know that I'd love to hear how you explain it, because I think coming from you itself would be great. But a couple of the essences that I love to give with Aurum, I feel I'm going in, I'm trying to, we've talked about shame, we've talked about guilt, we've talked about going inwards and withdrawing from the outside world almost into a black space, is that one of the flowers that you have in your range is Enchanter's Nightshade. And Enchanter's Nightshade to me is an essence that I use a huge amount, because, and this is my understanding, and I'd love to hear if I've got it quite right, but I see it as a flower that brings light to other flowers. It can grow in the shade. And therefore I see it as giving somebody a light switch to turn on, and to see that actually it's not really quite so bad when you turn the light on, because the light's gone out. So this is one that I feel suddenly when you can give someone that kind of the way I explain it to people I give it to, is it makes it much easier to go in and see what's going on here, and safer. So because, as you say, Aurum, it's a metal. It's a wonderful metal, but it is still a metal. And one of the other essences is that I like also is Bleeding Heart. Bleeding Heart I know is a grieving essence, and the picture, obviously, the doctrine of signatures, it has this beautiful picture of the heart. But Bleeding Heart is about forgiveness, starting with yourself.
Oneself, yeah.
Which to me is a lot about Aurum, because they feel they've let others down.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bleeding Heart is that self-directed or inner-directed energy that you really don't need anybody else around to make you feel bad. It's just, you can take care of that problem yourself.
Yeah.
Or that challenge yourself, and it's a separation. If you look at the Bleeding Heart, you go out and look at one in the garden, you can see that very strong centered line it goes through, and then you have the two hemispheres. It's that sort of compartmentalizing oneself off from other parts of the self, and then getting so good at that you actually start losing bits. You start losing a sense of yourself, and where there's that compartmentalization of the dark stuff is over here, it's all boxed away, and the part of me that's able to cope is over here coping, but without the benefit of the normal sort of whole aspect of the person. And so Bleeding Heart is breaking down those in a very loving way, in a very compassionate way, saying, it's okay, everything's okay, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just about learning and letting love in to sort of melt those barriers, and then sort of rediscovering, the inner landscape of the heart again, and being able to love oneself regardless. It's a tremendously important remedy for that.
Used in with so many of our remedies, so many. And the Enchanter's Nightshade?
Yeah, it's an amazing little tiny flower. It's a heart-shaped flower. Very interesting shape to it. And it's working on both sides of that, but in terms of people will do almost anything rather than look into that dark shadow aspect, because it's basically a fear remedy in that regard. And saying that, well, I'll do anything. I'll do the dishes. I'll wash the car. Just don't maybe look,
Yes.
at that stuff. And it is saying, well, there's a way that we can be comfortable in the light and comfortable in the darkness, and that we can bring the light into the dark and bring the dark into the light. Because some people have the other issue where there's too much light.
Yes.
Where they actually get on about, a spiritual growth and progress, and I'm just going to meditate and do yoga and do all these things and just light. And they actually, in some cases, not all, but in some cases, their development will be out of balance because of too much light.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to avoid the stuff that's tucked away, and so you want to sort of bring them back and say, enough with the light. Let's just redirect it and have this balance going backwards. But it is light switch is perfect. Coming into a dark room and knowing that you can flip that on, and that once the room is lit, it's not scary anymore.
So, I seem to remember a couple of weeks ago hearing you talk about an essence that I haven't used very much at all, but you kind of like switched on a few lights for me, and that was cloudberry. Now, cloudberry, as soon as you started talking about it on that day, I linked again and thought, wow, that would be lovely with Enchanter's Nightshade, because cloudberry is finding your own light.
Yeah.
So you don't actually need to have the switch, the help with the switch anymore. Can you? That was the way my brain kind of worked with the two together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, cloudberries. I had the pleasure of making that last summer again, so I have sort of a recent experience with it. But you're walking along; it's a bog plant, and you're walking along in the bog, and it's just this beacon of light popping out. It's almost like the first time you see it, you're sort of doing a double take and go, "Oh my goodness!" This just pure, bright white flower coming out of the undergrowth, and it really is this working on the keyword of reflection. So it's reflecting to you. You look at the flower and you gaze at the flower, and what you see is your own inner light. So it's reflecting that immediately, and sitting with it for a while or using it in a deeper way brings you directly in touch with the inner light that you have, regardless of how you might be feeling about yourself or the projection that you might have.
So from what I was, so would that make sense? And so for me, saying that for someone who has a resistance of going into a dark place, like we talked about with, say, an aurum situation, that the Enchanter's Nightshade might really help them turn the light on, and then they see their own light. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a shifting of that awareness that the person who doesn't want to go there, who needs that light, that assistance to go into those places, and granted, there's pretty scary places to go into, but to have this sense that, on the one hand, I don't, because of these things that have happened to me or these things that I've done, I'm not pure anymore. I don't have purity. I'm stained or sullied or whatever. That makes it even worse. It makes it even harder to go into those places, because it's like, well, why would I want to do that? I'm already feeling pretty bad. And the cloudberry is saying, no, even though you're feeling this way, or you've held things this way, and you have your story, of where you've been in your life, that's not touched this inner purity at all. It hasn't changed it at all. And so that sort of beacon that gets turned on from the inside.
So so you're saying that can be for feelings who have poor self-esteem, self-worth about themselves, which immediately brings to mind another homeopathic remedy, which is thuya.
Which I've also taken.
So thuya, because that's really opened up. I hadn't thought of cloudberry with thuya would be really lovely, because thuya is about where we don't show who we really are, because we can have a feeling that others wouldn't like us if they really saw who we were. So they can be great moulders and mould into the group of people that they're with at the time.
Yeah.
And very often, how I find giving the remedy thuya is in a similar way to aurum. It can be a deep remedy, because it's stuff that we may have hidden, and keep hidden and buried for years and years and years. And again, the way I prescribe and the way I feel the sensitivity of these people, the vulnerability of these people who are maybe needing thuya in this way. And I think we all need a bit of thuya, I have to say. There's not many people I know who don't go through a thuya phase in their life. But what can happen is that, remember, we don't like who we are. This is a thuya state.
Yeah.
So if we start to give thuya, I feel that sometimes it can come up, to release, and as soon as it comes up here, it's like, whoa, exposure. You know, suddenly we're going to show people who we really are. And I feel I need to give some letting go remedies or some resistant remedies, fear remedies, to say, just let it go, let it be. Otherwise, I find that sometimes they can push it, gobble it back down again and say, oh God, no, I can't quite let that go. And so again, some of these essences are just wonderful with helping that. And certainly how you talked about cloudberry would be a lovely one for that.
Definitely would.
The other one, which I want to talk about in other sort of situations as well, because I use it in so many ways, is your columbine, because columbine is also a one that I like to give with thuya, with showing your inner beauty.
Yeah.
You are beautiful inside. You are.
Yeah. Yeah, and the columbine is such a spectacularly beautiful plant and flower. You need to just look at it, and it grows a lot of places in the world, but in Alaska, it's quite unique.
Yeah.
It's a unique beauty. The colors you don't see in Alaska in any other flowers. So it's just absolutely unique. So yeah, the columbine. I mean, imagine being that flower, looking around in the forest at other flowers, and going, I'm not seeing anything like me at all. So there might be something wrong with me. I'm not. Look at all those blue flowers, all those purple flowers, and here I am, red and yellow. And that's the person who would be using columbine, is comparing themselves, rating themselves almost, and saying, well, she's, or any number of possibilities, but she looks really good in the morning. I don't look good in the morning, or I don't like the color of hair I have, or any of these kinds of things. Excuse me. We're in a society that artificially establishes criteria for beauty, and so the columbine is in a similar way as the cloudberry, but it's reaching in and finding your own unique self, and just letting that shine with no worries and no concern, and just I mean, even in the world of fashion and Hollywood and all of this, you see actors and actresses that aren't the typical beauties, or they aren't typically that nice to look at, as they say in the business. And yet they're so sure of themselves, and they so know themselves, and they so radiate that, and you just fall in love with them. So it's really good for, and I think a lot of these things are not age specific. Thuya certainly isn't, but the columbine is really good for young girls. Going and getting into puberty and all this peer pressure of putting makeup on and having to look a certain way.
Yes. The peer pressure, which that immediately triggers me onto one. Is a pyrite. That's also another one, isn't it? Would that go well at adolescence, puberty?
Absolutely. Yeah, pyrite. If you look at the picture that we have, the stone that we use for the remedy, and the picture that I took for that, and it's these three squares stacked up, really off kilter, off balance. You just keep waiting for it to fall over. And it's so the signature of that you can have this really strong inner balance and inner alignment. It doesn't matter how you look, how you act, who you are, what you know, any of these things, but that you just have this really strong sense of self, and your own value system is firmly set. And of course, the value system is being built throughout adolescence and even into university and early adulthood. But these formative things of being in the peer group, and then going to a different school and having a different peer group and all of that, and it all builds into that. And the pyrite person is the one who's been taking it and working with that. It's like, no, I already know what I want. and I can just pick and choose. You know, I don't have to go off in this side road just to reach a dead end and discover that I really didn't want to take that road at all. So that's
one of the homeopathic remedies that we use for that is very used a lot in adolescence is pulsatilla, which is you have passiflora. That's right. But pulsatilla is, as we see it, it's the stem that is it can bend and sway, but it actually stays upright. You know, it's a long stem with a little flower on the top, and it's often for where there can be difficulties in knowing how to say no, trying to not necessarily please, but to, as you say, be very much and keep up with what's going on with everybody else around you, within school and those kind of things. But often, you know, they can have a difficulty in saying no.
Yeah, the signature on that one is also called windflower.
Yes.
And so the wind blows this way, the flower goes that way. Wind blows this way, the flower goes that way. So, easily influenced.
So maybe I wanted to talk to you. I would love for you to tell the story of one of your environmental essences that I, again, have used a huge amount since I heard you talk about it, and that's Augustine Volcano. Because to me, you have a couple of volcanic environmental essences, and it surprised me the story of Augustine Volcano and how much I've used it since for the two words that I have, which I was going to say is gentle change, which is something that surprises me when you hear of a volcano.
Yeah, it's not the first thing you think about a volcano erupting. Yeah, there's this was made off the coast of Homer, Alaska, south central Alaska, and from there you can see the three volcanoes. Augustine, Iliamna, and Redoubt, and we've got 2 out of the 3. So next time Iliamna goes out, maybe we'll get that one too. But the eruption of Augustine was very interesting. It was in, I think, January, so it was dead of winter. But winter in Homer can be, because it's on the coast, so it can be really snowy and frozen and cold, and then it can be really rainy and muddy, and could just go back and forth that way. But this is a volcano that you see driving around Homer every day. I mean, you just see it off in the distance. And it was made by my office manager in Alaska and a friend of hers that had taken our certification training up there. And they got completely different pictures for it, but, completely different takes on it. But the eruption itself, and I talked to several residents later, that were there during the eruption, and it was a long, 3-week period of time that it kept erupting, sort of like the one we've got going on in Iceland here. Yeah. And the where I got a lot of what I told you about it before was this one woman who's a dear friend of mine noticed as she'd go outside and things would be in different places, So the fence would be a little bit higher than it was, or there'd be something that, the ground had moved in a certain way, or a door wouldn't open in the house like it used to, or, just that kind of thing that you would notice on a daily basis. And she started tuning in, and she knew that it had something to do with volcanoes, because you often have earthquakes, associated with eruptions, and not really big ones, but just, enough to get your attention for a few seconds. And she just realized that over that period of 3 weeks that things were just move a little bit, and then move a little bit, move a little bit. And that at one point it seemed like it was, almost going to break the fence, or something was going to crack, or, but it never got to that point. And then at the end of it all, when the snow melted and the thaw came, and she went out and looked at the fence, and it was perfectly straight again. So there's this idea that you could actually have that kind of really powerful change coming from deep within the earth, and moving that kind of energy. Not even just talking about all the magma and the smoke and the ash and everything that's coming out, but how it's moving the land around it and changing the land around it. That could happen so gently, and without. It was almost as though the volcano was saying, we need to do this. We need to erupt. It's our time. We're going to do it how we need to do it. But it's not going to be that big of a bother, so don't worry about it. Just work with us here, and it'll be fine.
And wasn't there also...
we just said it's benevolent, benevolent volcano.
Yes. And also one of the things I seem to remember you saying is that there is a certain amount of... I don't know if I want to use the word anxiety, but trepidation or whatever, is when is it going to go and what's going to happen. And in fact, the day that it did go, the wind blew it all out to sea. And so they never even got the debris of the volcanic ash. So it really was so gentle. And
they're not always like that one, but that one was just a gift. It was just, pay attention. This is possible. It may not always be like this, but it could be like this. And so it goes right in the face of the standard human response to, oh my God, what are we going to do? And to say, as many of the other environmental essences say, this is a power of nature. This is something that's much bigger than we are, much more powerful than we are. So we have two choices. We can work with it, we can go along with it, or we can try to fight against it or be in fear, of it. And with Augustine, it was just this huge reminder that you can work with it. And, I'm not saying that the people in Homer were able to dictate how the volcano was going to erupt. It wasn't to that degree, I don't think. But that there was that level of communication and coexisting with three volcanoes out your kitchen window. You get that sort of familiarity. It's like, okay, that's the way things are.
Amazing.
But... So one of the ladies said, unexpected surprises. Powerful, unexpected surprises. Just imagine that it could be good.
Yes. Yeah, that's lovely.
And, so it's coming up a lot for people in that
they
have the anxiety. It's a way to break through the anxiety and go to a positive outcome.
Yeah. So one of the areas that I have used it is where I feel that somebody is hugely sensitive, as opposed to maybe resistant, I don't know, maybe it's the same, but to change. And I know recently I've had a lot of people coming to me with huge energy problems. Their systems are beginning to shut down. Now, whether this has been that they've had one or two or three viral illnesses after the other and they're just on what we call a never been well since, we just can't quite get back to how we used to be, or whether they've gone into and actually had a diagnosis of being given chronic fatigue.
Right.
But these are remedies, and I find your essences are so wonderful for helping people give them some energy back. But it is also about looking at maybe what was going on beforehand and what was happening maybe over a very, very gradual period of time.
Yeah.
But a way of living that maybe has to change. But when you talk to people like this, it can be, well, I cannot change. There is nothing I can change in my life. So the change needs to be extremely gentle and very on a very sensitive level.
Yeah.
So I've often used Augustine Volcano with some of your amazing gem essences that I find absolutely fantastic for energy. So I'm just going to reel some off, and then if you wouldn't, I just really love to see some of your comparing and contrasting of these essences. So fire opal, opal, carnelian, pearl, orange calcite even perhaps, and I think I'm thinking a lot of these orange gems, and quartz, the clear quartz, the Himalayan quartz, the Brazilian quartz.
Brazilian quartz, yeah.
Those are the ones that immediately come to mind for me, along with the Augustine Volcano and some other of the environmentals. Are there any of those that... Actually, I love the difference between the opal and the fire opal.
Yeah.
Those are two good comparisons.
Yeah, so... But we'll just edit this part out, but I sort of lost the thread in using these remedies, these opals, especially in these energy, carnelian and so on, in support of
chronic fatigue,
energy.
Okay. Giving people the energy to be able to move through change.
Right.
But they're often on, the thing is that they're often on a very low energy, and maybe it's now completely turned their life upside down because they cannot work anymore. Their bodies have gone into an almost shutdown. And so what I'm feeling is by bringing in these essences, when I'm working with people homeopathically on this, I'm very clear to say this is an energy medicine. We can give you the energy, but if it's used up very quickly and you go out and burn the candle again at both ends, it'll go again.
Yeah.
So, and we've got some wonderful homeopathic remedies which I can bring up in a minute. But what I've found is that using some of your essences, it's almost working on yet another level of saying, some of them are saying, here you've got the energy, but let's try and work with the change at the same time. And the other essence, the particular fire opal, is about the storage almost, and it's saying, and until we see the change, we're not going to release. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm understanding what you're saying. It's, the person sort of got themselves painted into a corner, and you're saying, well, you need to change your lifestyle, and they're saying, well, I can't change my lifestyle, or, I just don't have the energy to make change. But I can't. Yes. But they also in recognition that I can't sustain this.
Yes.
So yeah, the opal and the fire opal are huge in there, because the opal would be more for the direct energy, charging up the color frequencies and the chakras, going to where it's most depleted, color-wise, and lifting that up and charging that back up. And that energy would be more available in the moment. But to the degree that a person was depleted in the first place, they might need to take it for a while, to build that back up before they could even tell the difference. But the fire opal is brilliant because it's basically coming and saying, I'm going to help you charge back up, but it's going into a savings account and you can't touch it until it's topped off.
I suppose, yeah.
So once it's topped off, whatever comes over the top, like water going over a dam or something, you can have that, but you can't drop down any more than that. So it's so that a person can then move forward in a topped up state.
Yes.
And still be having surplus.
Yeah.
Surplus consciousness is something that's really missing on this planet, in terms of energy, personal energy.
Yeah.
So it's that, using both of those to just charge up, having some available in the moment and some that you just have to wait till it tops up. And then once the person has some energy to work with, they can start making some lifestyle changes. Yeah. Because, like a moving change or a job change or something like that. They want to get a little bit of spark back, before they tried to do that. So it's really good for the chronic fatigue kinds of things where it's, it didn't happen overnight. It took this person maybe 20 years to drain themselves of that life force energy. But the good news is the person doesn't have to spend the next 20 years getting it back. With these vibrational remedies, it can come back a lot faster. And carnelian's another one that I just love, that is similar in that it's giving you that, it's a very orange, fiery stone, and it's giving you that energy in an appropriate way, but it's also helping you channel and move and flow and process energy in more efficient ways. So you could have the same amount of energy and better use of it.
Yeah.
Better mileage,
yes,
if you will.
Yeah.
So that whole group of, one might come up better than another for that person, but it's interesting that really, really strong people often get the most burnt out.
Yeah.
So we call it the tired and wired syndrome, that they always have energy, but they're always tired at the same time, and eventually they will collapse too, because of the depletion. And so using a bunch of these different remedies together, not only reversing the depletion, but getting off of the tired and wired wagon. So it's consistent. It's not this up and down kind of thing.
So again, coming back in, and I know fire opal comes to mind, but all of these ones do, is an area again that is, I think certainly where you are in America, it's getting very well known, but it's becoming more and more over here. Is the way we're working our adrenal glands.
Oh yeah.
And the stress and strains and the fact that these these beautiful little glands that we have that are designed to work in to release our stress hormone.
Yeah.
And so many of us are living off this stress continuously and not letting our adrenal glands have the rest that they need. And when we're wired up in that state, it can be but I cannot. I need to pay the mortgage, I need to do this, I need to do that. I cannot change my life. It is impossible to change my life. And what I am wanting to do with a lot of the people I see is that I'm wanting to actually preempt the fact that we may get to a chronic fatigue stage with these, and actually give them the essences that you have, the fire opal, the opal, to help give their adrenals some energy back, but also to work to give this gentle change that actually they can, by getting their life back in balance. These are homeopathic remedies, your essences. To me, they're about putting the body back in balance, so that maybe the stresses that they couldn't deal with yesterday, in fact, maybe they can deal with better today, because we're helping release some of of what has gone on in the past, so that their life can be handled slightly differently.
Yeah.
The awareness comes up more, and so I would be giving a lot of remedies here that could be either linked to, because often when we get to this stage of the adrenals being overworked, is we can start to get anxiety, and feelings of survival issues, but I've got to pay the mortgage. So trying to feel, but not feeling safe anymore.
Everything gets exacerbated.
That's right. So I am looking at giving remedies that will help the adrenals. Now, we have loads of remedies that aren't necessarily specifically for the adrenal glands, but things like Count Carb, for instance, one of our biggest homeopathic remedies, Count Carb. Count Carb is about feeling solid, reliable, dependable. They're the people you really can, good old Susan, she's wonderful, or whatever, that kind of thing. And it gives you back the structure and the security and the safety of saying, yes, I can do this. One of the things that Count Carb hates most is not suddenly being able to cope anymore.
Yeah.
And even worse, having others think that they can't cope anymore, because they're the copers of society. And they're the ones that will finish the job and do it beautifully and don't let you down in that way. So Count Carb can be a wonderful remedy with some of those essences we've talked about, to really help bring that stress back into balance, so that the cortisol, our stress hormone, isn't being overworked.
Yeah, no, that's so important.
Yeah.
And aren't you also using tissue salts and different things along with that?
Yes, a lot of the tissue salts, because the tissue salts is another lovely way of being able to support some of these, the remedies that we have, and alongside your essences, because tissue salts are diluted. Most of our homeopathic remedies, we have 1 part of the remedy to 99 parts water, and then we succuss that, shake it, and put 1 drop of that in, so that's the 1C, and then we go up and up to the 2C and the 3C by diluting. And with the tissue salts, they're diluted in a 1 in 10, 1 in 10 drops. And the Schussler tissue salts that you can buy in all of the shops. Can you get those in America too? Yes, you get them in America too. They're wonderful as almost like a nutritional. There's something left of the original substance, and it's giving us back the minerals and the salts that our body needs. So again, wonderful for feeding the tissues. We have your essences, which are on such a different level, and then we have the tissue salts. And again, it's that safety feeling. And tissue salts, we talked about suddenly everything's being, it's feeling unsafe. How can I pay the mortgage next month? Can I feed the kid? All this kind of thing that's going on at the moment. Yeah. And these tissue salts are helping to feed our cells back at a different level. Brilliant. So again, that feeling of feeling safe on all the levels. Yeah.
Well, that's great, because it brings up something I've just come into a better understanding of, and I'm taking the tissue salts myself, but is that this situation that a lot of people have without really knowing it, where they're operating in their bodies, some aspects are fairly well grounded and they're functional, and they can drive to work and pay the bills and do their job. But there's a certain amount of them, maybe the non-physical aspect of them that hasn't come in yet. Yeah. and that they, in extreme cases, it's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And these kinds of people will often have allergies, will often have hypersensitivity, what we call hypervigilance, with insomnia and this kind of stuff. And it's just come clear to me on a personal as well as professional level that burns minerals out of the body like crazy. That you have certain trace minerals are coming in with your food. If you have green leafy vegetables or whatever, you're getting a lot of those. But having that imbalance of I'm really active on the non-physical level and I'm active on the physical level, and not having the kind of unification or integration that is possible, it depletes the body of those trace minerals and those important substances that just, they're gone, in many cases.
And as well as you saying it in that way, we can also see it in a way that the body actually doesn't, it stops learning how to assimilate. In another way.
You could be having the best diet in the world and it's not assimilating.
That's right. So, we one of the homeopathic remedies we often think of for lack of assimilation is silica. Now, silica in a substance is we see it as an inert substance, but it's wonderful to start helping.
That's what that's made out of.
Yes. And, of course, silica is one of the tissue salts.
Yep.
You can take, it's number 12 in the tissue salts. So, I think that the other thing I was going to bring up, you brought up allergies and things, but another thing that we can get a lot of in our practices and as homeopaths, and I'm sure it's the same with the essences, and that this can often be happening with these people, is we can get symptoms of digestive systems, digestive symptoms, like, for instance, IBS and these kind of things, which can be brought on, through the stress, and overworking the adrenal glands, but this feeling of not quite being connected. So, part of you is maybe operating out here, and when we go into that high state of, if we go into a full fight or flight situation, which our adrenals are totally designed to handle, it's our digestion is one of the first things that shuts down. And so if we take that into a continuous, rather than having a huge shock or situation happen to us that puts us into that fear state, but we're actually living off that on a sort of much more, almost drip feeding that stress into our body day in, day out, then we can start to have this separation, and the digestive system is saying, well, am I out here or am I in? And we find that the peristaltic motion of the digestive system can stop operating as it was, and we can almost have the adrenaline taking over to let the food down. And of course, then we can get the symptoms of bloating and distension and this kind of thing. And that's, again, on a homeopathic point of view, essence point of view, there's so much I feel we can do to help that get back in balance, as opposed to asking all the huge symptoms about specifically what's going on with the IBS. Very often it's the stress that's involved with that person, and getting that part back in balance, and then the digestive system slots back in as we get that merging, that balancing, that harmony back again.
Well, I think that's going to be very interesting for a lot of people that I know and that I'm working with. It's great information for myself, personally as well. And there is a feeling when you get into these places of, I don't know how to get out of here. Just because you get hungry, you eat. The system is not sort of recognizing the food as being anything that it really wants. And it's just very interesting that I think, it's sort of, again, I use the picture of painting yourself in a corner, but over a long period of time, 20, 25 years, and just the habits that we have, the life habits that we have, and then all of a sudden one day ending up in this place and going, how did I get here? And just, it's a great relief to know, there's a way out, there's a way to feed the system, to maybe even protect in some ways, have better boundaries around everything, and to build up over a period of time to where it just comes back online.
So that also, some of the things you've mentioned there leads me on to the knock-on effect that can happen within the body. obviously one of my passions is the endocrine system, but
Yes.
but it leads me on to the pancreas and our blood sugar levels.
Absolutely.
And how that can get knocked. If we get into stress, we'll often crave the stimulants or the sugary foods or the instant energy foods that can start to create this yo-yo zigzag within us of our blood sugars in the pancreas. So it brings to mind some homeopathic remedies to help with this. But you have the most amazing essences I know of that can really help stabilise this alongside it. One of the first ones that comes to mind is the northern coral root, which I'd love to hear you talk about.
Yeah. Well, and I think you probably know aspects of it better than I do. It's a newer essence. It's one of what we call the research essences, but it's an orchid that is, as all orchids, are very picky about where they grow, and they can't be transplanted. They have a very symbiotic relationship with the soil that they grow in, and that's down to the microbial level. Individual microbes that they're having a conversation with. And so the upshot of all of that is that the feeding mechanism, how this orchid actually, orchids are pretty amazing. You see these orchids where they're not really in soil. They're supported in like wood chips or something, and they're sitting there, and they're basically getting water from the air, getting oxygen from the air, and they're just sort of, living from just being there. And this is another version of that, although it has roots and it does grow in the soil, but it has no leaves. So it doesn't do photosynthesis like a normal plant. And what it does is it actually thrives and feeds off of waste materials from other plants. So it's taking up as food, as breakfast, lunch, and dinner, the stuff that other plants are giving off as toxins. And so it's a perfect recycling system. And it regulates, in terms of these things we've been talking about, it helps to regulate the system because it's helping us process, it's helping us let go of the stuff we don't need. It's, which any help you can get in that direction is going to be great. It's not like, I have to do this fast or I have to do this, extreme. Some people are too weak to do those kinds of things, to clean the guts out and whatnot. But it's this sense of, I can help you let go of this stuff. For me, it's lunch, It's no problem for me. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter how black or yucky or whatever it might be. And at the same time, it teaches us how to be a better plant in that sense of have a symbiotic relationship with where you are. And we found that if you're communicating and working more with the earth in that way, in other words, exchanging energy, letting go of what you don't need, bringing in what you do need, being fed from the earth. Obviously we get that energy through the food that's grown in the earth, but this is a direct connection. So being fed from the earth balances the blood sugar. It's like I have energy. I have access to energy whenever I want because I have that symbiosis going on. And of course, we all have that to some degree or we wouldn't be here. But it's improving that. It's like a teacher for that and saying, no, you can do that more and more. And then things just smooth out.
So some of our we have other homeopathic remedies that have been made in a slightly different way, and one of the ones that comes to mind that I often give this with is actually from the white chestnut tree. We call it chestnut tree white. It's in the books, but white chestnut has this wonderful ability to work with the blood sugars in the pancreas as well. And it has this thing of helping to break down the fat within. So I find that those two together can really, really have a very powerful effect. And one of the other remedies that I like often to give with this, because we've talked through our adrenal energy, general energy reserves, and now coming on to the actual pancreas and our blood sugar levels, is that we've also got a homeopathic remedy which we've made from brown rice. organic brown rice.
Right, I just heard about that.
And organic brown rice is just wonderful. You can imagine what it does as a food. How it's a wonderful one we think of to stabilise and stop the blood sugar levels, but also to make us feel safe here. Rice is our staple, is part of our staple diet. So it's also on another level actually helping us not do this being too a little bit out here and a little bit in. It's about bringing in feeling stable. So we have these two remedies here, and then we also have other remedies that you can think about. Obviously, we're matching these remedies to the people coming in, and so that we're getting it as like with like as we can, which is what homeopathy is all about. But we also have sugar, saccharum we call it, saccharum as a remedy, and we have chocolate as a remedy, which can be often helping to take away some of the cravings that people may get. Now, obviously the beauty of homeopathy and of the essences is that we're working holistically with people. So we're looking at the whole picture as opposed to just, well, I crave chocolate or I want the sugar, this and that. And so we're looking at what's behind that and why. So sometimes these cravings are not necessarily because someone's hungry, but it's because they're needing it for another reason. And so some of these remedies can really fit in beautifully about that. And there's another essence that comes to mind to that, which is Labrador tea.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah,
Labrador tea is amazing. It's the plant. It's the one that I've made into an essence isn't the same exact one that the ledum or ledum comes from, the homeopathic remedy, but it's the same family. But it's used by the indigenous people, the native people of Alaska, to treat both constipation and diarrhea as a tea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you've got that, take it. If you've got that, take it. So it goes, works in both directions. And my experience with it was that I had an allergic reaction to it in a very interesting scenario as a firefighter. I love Labrador tea. It's the most aromatic plant in Alaska. But there are certain things that will increase the power of that aroma, and that one of them is to be on a fire and be clearing it, away from the fire. And so I was on a fire, and I was in charge of the helicopter landing and getting supplies and people and moving them around the fire. And the smoke jumpers had gone in and cut out a 1/4 acre of Labrador tea, freshly cut. That's a lot of Labrador tea.
Wow.
Just grows in the bog that way. And I was flying in to this landing zone, to then be stationed there for the next 3 days to accept supplies and people as they were coming through. And I could smell the Labrador tea in the helicopter a couple of miles out. I'm going, what's this? Because normally you smell jet fuel or whatever. Yeah. And so we come in and we land and they drop me off and all my stuff, and then the helicopter takes off and I'm standing there in this freshly cleared patch of Labrador tea. Well, within 10 minutes I had an allergic reaction. And there's a whole story to this, which I probably don't want to go into the whole thing, but for the next 3 days, it's like somebody turned a faucet on, and just this amazing release process. At some point during that, I had it together enough to, when the helicopter came in, I'd get up and unload it and tell people which trail to take and so on, and answer the radio. But at the end of that 3 days, and this was after being out on fires all summer long. This was like September, and I've been out for 60, 70 days by then. And towards the end of that experience, I started thinking, not connecting it with Labrador tea at all. I'm getting kind of tired of this. I've had enough. I think it's a pretty extreme life to be out on fires for over 2 months, and I probably made a pretty good amount of money, and the Labrador tea at that point started to speak to me in a way that I could understand, and it said, what we've been doing with all of this, discharge and release that you've been experiencing as an allergy or allergic reaction, is we've been balancing your workaholism. We've been helping you come into a place where you can recognize when enough is enough. And as I started to work with that, because I'd made, the Labrador tea essence before this happened. So I knew a little bit about it, in my experience of making it. But I was sort of dropped into this experimental, process with it. And I remember getting on the radio and calling the fire boss and saying, I'm out of here. Take me home, replace me. I'd never done anything like that before. I voluntarily am, which you could do. I mean, people did it, but I'm voluntarily asking to be taken off.
Yeah.
And that was the point at which I realized that my goal in life, or my purpose in life, was really the essences and not to be a firefighter. So it was this huge... That's why I have so much faith in this remedy. It's just coming in and saying it doesn't matter whether you've been addicted to this substance all your life, or this situation has been going on that you've actually worked yourself into, and now you don't want to be in there anymore, like firefighting.
Yeah.
It was just so powerful. It's like, we'll go through any part of your life and help you find balance. Because the addictive thing, my take on that is... When you're needing a substance, I mean, the definition of addiction is you need a substance to make you feel normal. Mm-hmm. So you're not waking up and just feeling good normally. Yeah. So coffee, I'm not going to pick on any particular substance, but a person says, well, I need a cup of coffee or two to feel normal. Then the body has this thing called tolerance. So we build up a tolerance to caffeine. Well, I need 3 cups now, or I need a double shot, or I need a grande instead of the regular, And if you're doing several things like that, so, 3 cigarettes used to do it, now I have to smoke a pack. I used to could just take a square of chocolate, now I can do the whole bar. And it's because the body has this capacity for tolerance, and it's like the guy on the high wire where he has this big, long bar, and he's going across the high wire.
Yeah.
The higher up he is, the longer the bar needs to be to give him that balance. And so with a person who's laboratory, me coming into that of having a firefighting career, instead of staying in balance in the center, I would go out this way and then I would go out that way to balance it, and then go out further from my center and go out further this way to balance it. And then what happened to me on that fire is I was out as far as I could get, and they said, okay, well, the way back in is this, and it's just going to look like you have an allergy. Yeah. So the way back in, 3 days, didn't feel good, but that was it, and that changed my whole life. Yeah. So that, again, if you apply it to any addictive behavior or substance, it can help you find the strength inside to say, I'm stronger without it. Yeah. I don't need it.
So following on from that, sort of, as you talk, it's coming into, is almost when you've done that kind of either cleansing, detoxing, whatever it is you want to call that, and then made the awareness, is how about essences to help step you into the new?
Yeah.
Anything come to mind?
Well, I mean, fireweed's probably the most basic one. We've talked about fireweed a bit, but it's both out with the old and in with the new, and it's both at the same time, which is kind of nice. That you could use fireweed and Labrador tea together in that regard.
So would fireweed in that sense be where there's still maybe a little bit of resistance, or is it because I always understand fireweed as helping you through a transition period, helping you go with it. It's like the fire of the... Yeah,
it would be when there's still a little bit of resistance for sure. But peridot,
Yeah, I was going to say peridot and rock spring are two that come straight to mind.
Peridot is, we call it the stone of new beginnings. And it's, it's just saying that when you want to, I'm sitting there at the end of that experience saying, okay, now what? Yeah. And so it's that we call it an incubator. We've actually used it with babies in incubators to help give them that kind of protection. Yeah. So it's that I want to start something new. I have some ideas. There's some things that I've wanted to do for a long time. Maybe now's the time to get into that, or I've got a project I want to start. But there's sometimes a feeling of vulnerability around that beginning time, and that I really, you just want to sort of cocoon yourself, or go off and hide in a cabin in the woods in order to get that thing going. And so the peridot, it's a heart stone that is helping a person feel protected and feel that support for that new cycle of experience. And then the rock spring, which is one of my favorite remedies, is a environmental essence made from a natural spring that the water's coming right out of the rock. Just this sort of crack in the rock. And I've walked all around, and I've not found, like there's water above in lakes and there in the mountains, but it's groundwater. It's just made this journey through the dark, through the underground, and then come out, and then cascades down the face of this big rock. And the making of that essence was so amazing. There was 4 of us, all had really similar experiences, which is always an amazing sign. But this water was just effervescent when it came out of that rock. It was just chatty. It was just very gregarious and saying, how amazing journey it was to get through. Here I am, out in such a beautiful day, and the sun's out, and I'm out, and it's so glorious. And there were times when I was in the ground that I, and I'm sure I was projecting onto it, but it was just this vivacious, effervescent energy coming out, and it was basically talking to us, all 4 of us, and saying, like a young child would come up to you and sort of, look at you that way, and then sort of, just checking you out. And then, again, with the innocence of a child saying, well, how come you're not having more fun? How come you're not smiling? What's the deal? And so we call it an essence for hope and miracles and just moving forward without worrying so much. And,
lovely.
To have faith that everything's going to turn out okay. And patience, that patience is definitely a virtue in this regard, but that it's all going to turn out okay, and it's an essence that we suggest that people can put in just about anything, because you can't get too much of that.
And I love the fact, again, talking about support and feeling safe, is that you've got that wonderful flow of that fantastic water, but you've got the stability and the solidity of that rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful together. I like to, again, you said you talked about the babies and incubators. Is that another time that I like to use your essences along with the homeopathic remedies is maybe when someone's going through actually the end of their cycle, going into menopause, where it's almost like we're needing to reset the framework. We've got a whole area here that was there for procreation if we chose to do that. But now it's like we're going through change. This is change, and sometimes some of us can be resistant to change. Some of us can be very much among the belief systems of the country we live in as to what it means to be moving into this stage. And I'm always wanting to say to work with it as being a very exciting time. But it does mean sometimes leaving behind or saying goodbye to some sad stuff that maybe we've had in our lives, or our children are beginning to grow up, and it's all exciting, but there's a sadness about how that part of life is changing, and it's nothing we can do about it. It's happening, but I think there are some wonderful, along with our remedies, that can help with some of the symptoms that we get around this time. One of them that comes to mind that I use a lot here, rock spring, that exciting, lovely time. I often will the energy of that, I often can see it with something like a lachesis patient that we have. Now, lachesis, if we read the homeopathic books, it can be about people who can be very huge PMT type symptoms. They can be very mouthy and have quite strong physical symptoms around their monthly cycle. And but I see lachesis as coming through as it's stepping into your power as a woman, as a new beings. This is the new me kind of thing. And rock spring is kind of giving you that strength and stability, and the water is washing away. But I'm not sorry.
Made from lachesis.
Lachesis is made. It's the venom from a snake.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yes, we do. It's a wonderful remedy, but it's a great hormonal remedy, especially for women. And it's also, interestingly, a remedy that we use a lot for the throat. And we know from the chakra system, if we work with the chakra system, and we know that the sacral area and the throat area have a huge amount of connection. So we're very often looking at connections there with that sort of stuff going on. But another essence that I use of yours a huge amount at this time, with another remedy that comes to mind, is nature myrrh. Now, nature myrrh, talked about Ignatia very early on, but nature myrrh is salt, sea salt, coming from our common table salt, really. And we see it again. It's a sea essence, so it's coming from the sea, salt, and the sea has a huge affinity. The tides have a huge affinity with our monthly cycle. They have an affinity for the moon, and all this kind of thing we know can have a big effect on women. And nature myrrh we see as another grieving essence, but it's a grieving essence often where we've built a brick wall up around the heart through pain, through loss, through sadness, whatever that may be. And so we learn to function with the wall. And again, nature myrrh is about trying to help break that wall down so that you can really get into your full potential. And so coming into this time, it's a lovely remedy to give for people who maybe have got some sadness about leaving stuff behind as they're moving into a new phase of their lives as such. And the remedy, the essence that, I think you can probably guess what I'm going to say, the essence that I love to give from nature myrrh is another sea, it's a sea essence of yours, which is tidal forces.
Yeah, there's actually a couple that have come up while you're talking, and that one, of course, is so much connected with the cycle and with the moon and with the tides. It's an essence of the tides through a whole high-low tide cycle. In Alaska, in a place where the tides are second or third taller, forget how they describe them, but the most amount of difference between high tide and low tide of any place in the world. I think Nova Scotia has the highest and the lowest, but so it's quite dramatic in terms of the amount of water that flows in and flows out in this period of time. But the story, without going into it too deeply, of that essence, and we find this a lot in the environmental essences and in essences that are made from these kinds of larger pictures and larger energies, that the bowl that was used to make that essence was put in a place when the essence was started. And it was a dear friend of mine who made this, Janice Schofield. She put this bowl in a place, and she knows tides. I mean, she lived on the ocean for most of her life. She put it in a place, this little rock shelf, and she thought, well, this is going to be fine here. She comes back to check on it later on, like before going to bed, I believe, and it was gone. The bowl was gone. And she thought, it was an animal, messed with it and tipped it over, and, where did it go? So she goes back and talks to her husband and the folks that were there with her, figure, well, and her immediate thought was all loss is gain. That's what came to her. She said she was upset about losing the bowl, that we had loaned her the bowl, and it's like, no, it's not a big deal. So she's saying all loss is gain, writes it down in her notebook, goes to bed, gets up the next morning, goes back down to check. Maybe I looked in the wrong place. Maybe it's further up the shoreline. And as she walks down to the water, here's the bowl floating on the ocean, coming towards the shore.
Wow.
And they sort of meet each other, the bowl coming in and her coming down, and she picks the bowl up. So it's actually this miracle kind of, nature going out of her way to show us what's possible, and how the feeling of the person, the woman reaching this time in her life, maybe she didn't get to have any kids and she's sad about that, but there's a lot of poignancy in the emotional state, and it's a time like puberty where it's going to come up. Whatever's there is going to come up. And so the tidal forces is saying it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the content of that is for that person.
Yeah.
In terms of, we can help you.
Yeah.
So it's this embrace from nature saying, whatever it is, just work with me.
Yeah.
You know, and of course the cycle of letting go is so very important, to be able to let go with the sense of it's not being taken away from me. You know,
Absolutely.
my fertile years are not being taken away from me.
Mm-hmm.
In my wisdom, I am moving to something better. Or I'm moving to something that's equally as good, or at this point in my life, it actually will be better, more of what I really want, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So that the letting go is voluntary, by choice. Then a person can really let go well and fully, and then just sit there like Christmas Day, you know, waiting for it to come back.
Yeah.
And to be able to start that new cycle of, okay, now I'm not concerned with that so much, and all the excitement, all the new things that I can do, and to embrace those.
So, because I wanted to hear about the other ones you were going to talk about, but I just wanted to finish off with how I have the beauty I see of this with the nature mure is that I've had experience of giving nature mure, and the last thing a nature mure wants to do really is let go, especially in front of anybody, or have that sudden. And yet, that's often what happens is when the wall goes, it's a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that's not a bad thing, because it is a release, but it's not gentle, and they're not comfortable with doing it. And sometimes you could almost see them build the wall back in. I don't know what came over me, kind of thing.
Right.
And I better get back to this. And so what I love with giving, whether it be for a heart reason, or for a helping in moving through a phase in life and letting go. But what I love with tidal forces is I always see it as this. I see it as a tide coming in and going out. So this is about, okay, well, maybe I'll let the first brick go.
Yeah.
So the first brick the nature mure is stimulating this to happen within, and the first brick can go, and I can see it almost sort of going, and then it's like, oh, maybe that was just a little bit too much, and you try to pull it back, and maybe you get a little bit of it back, but actually you're bringing back new.
Right.
And as you bring back new, that gives you new energy, and then as the next wave goes, the next brick can go, and suddenly it becomes easier and easier and easier. And as you say, it's totally voluntary, absolutely you in control, which is what nature mure like. But the release is happening, and it's gentle, and wow, have they moved forward so much quicker and so much more happier within themselves. It can be it's such empowering to watch someone do that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's night and day, because in any part of life, when you feel like something's just being yanked away from you,
yes, it's raw.
To be able to move that positioning and just say, no, this is actually, there's a larger cycle at work here that I signed up for, and just move with that, and have nature work with me.
What were the other ones that you've thought of when I was talking about nature mure?
Northern Lady Slipper.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's the one that came up when you're talking about gentle. It's a white orchid, cream-colored orchid with some little purple bits, and it's just, I mean, I'm not one of those kind of people that can cry at the drop of a hat. I'm a man, and that wasn't something that I learned growing up or whatever. And I have a really dear friend in Alaska that's she's probably in her 70s now, but she's sort of the plant lady of Alaska. And she's put out a number of flower books, and so I'd call her up every once in a while when I was trying to find something, and I'd say, well, I've seen these pictures of this white lady slipper orchid, and I'm just wondering where they might be. And so she said, well, go up here and go over there and over that ridge and down into that place, and there they'll be, because she just knows that kind of stuff. So I went to this place and walked into this, in sort of like a birch forest, and into this area where there was about 15 or 20 of these lady slipper orchids, and I just sat down and started crying. I mean, it was beyond thought. I just had no intention, had no idea. But I just sat there, and the energy was so sublimely gentle and soothing. And, I remember, because I'm out in the middle of nowhere, really, and I remember looking around to make sure nobody could see me crying. It's that kind of embarrassment that men have and that some people have. But it was a short and quick release, and then I just, sort of dried my eyes off and looked around and just started, I had this whole new appreciation for these orchids, and I thought, well, I wonder if that's what the essence is for, and I went back actually next season, because it was too late that season, and made the essence in that same place and just sat there, for a couple hours, and it's just this incredibly gentle, soothing, nurturing embrace of energy that's saying, it hurts, we know it hurts, it's okay, we've got you.
Sounds lovely.
Sounds really nice. It's a melting of resistance, because a lot of times we're resisting moving through these kinds of life-changing events, not because, as well as they're painful in the moment or they're bringing up some things, but we don't want any more hurt. We don't want to go through something that's going to hurt more. Northern Lady Slipper is saying, no, it doesn't have to. Let me help you with that. It can be gentle. Healing can be gentle. Transition can be gentle. And the resistance then just starts to melt away in the face of that. Yeah.
So I can see the bricks.
Yeah, the bricks just
coming
sort of
down.
falling away.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So it's worked really well with these other remedies.
Tell me, one of the reasons that this all came about is because whenever I'm doing all my teaching, I'm always bringing in your essences and the combinations that I use with them, and I've had a lot of pressure from some of the students and the graduates to say, should be putting more out there and everything, and why don't you do something with Steve, which is how this came about here. So one of my big problems is maybe we can call it creativity block or writer's block or whatever, but I would say writer's block. And I was working with this and thinking, okay, what's a good little thing to be able to take to see if we can lift that.
Got a writer's block remedy. Good.
Well, that's who I have. No. But the first one that comes to mind is, I've got two flowers that came straight into mind, and from your range, and that is the yellow paintbrush and northern tway blade.
Yeah.
So I only know them really as a little tiny bit in the back of your little catalogue, because they're research essences.
Yeah.
Would you mind enhancing on them, because they feel really great.
Well, and the backstory is that my last book came out 10 years ago.
Yes, and that's my next question.
There's a pressure to get the next book out. There's several essences I would love to put together for that idea of getting re-energized and inspired and all of that kind of thing. So, the yellow paintbrush is an interesting plant, and there are several of them, but the signature of it is that there's the leaves. It's like hard. It's where do the leaves stop and the flower starts. So if you look at a paintbrush, it's just sort of this transition from leaf to flower. The leaves look like flowers. The flowers look like leaves. How can what came first, or which way is it going? And there are several plants that are like that, but it's this beautiful view of what evolution looks like. This is evolving right before our very eyes. And it's also got a signature of the root system that it has, often taps into other plants' roots, and assuming that that's fine with the other plants. So there's this co-creative, cooperative process going on underneath the ground. And then as the plant comes out, there's this process of, evolving and growing in that way. And so it does bring those two qualities of, I don't have to do this all myself. I can tap into a collective. I can go to a writer's workshop. I can, go to a community south of France or someplace where there's writers and there's support for that. I don't have to be, in a cave or in a cabin someplace doing this all by my lonesome. And then the other part is, of course, the heart part. It's a blue thinking of the essence blue. Mm-hmm. It's a green to yellow. So green changing into yellow, green more of the leaves, yellow more of the flowers part. But it's very much a heart remedy because it's coming from the earth, coming up through the legs, coming up through the feet, into the legs, rising up in the body and coming up into the heart, which is where we get the creative juice. You know, we get the inspiration coming down this way, but the juice to do something with that inspiration comes up this way. And so the paintbrush is when there's a block here somewhere that's keeping that energy from rising up and meeting the inspiration and being able to come out, you know, through the heart, through the writing, through the voice or whatever. And a lot of times that is, I don't think what I have to offer is that great, so it's a self-esteem issue. I don't, you know, what are people going to think about what I put out there in the world? So it's a confidence issue or a protection issue. You know, all of these various things that it could be. And it's just like, no, just open it up and let it flow and let it come out. So I should be taking some of that.
Wow, I was going to say that what I find fascinating from what you just said there is that for all of us who use your book, is that is written in 6 lines.
Yeah.
So your book needs to be be fantastic.
Needs to be expanded.
It's very inspiring listening to it in that way. But then the Northern Tway Blade?
Yeah, the Northern Tway Blade's actually in the main set, but it's another orchid, little tiny terrestrial orchid, grows about that tall, you know, just 2.5 inches tall. And the very strange looking flowers. Tway blade means 2 leaves, which are right at the surface of the ground, the top of the ground. So you've got this little spike and then these really sort of inside out looking flowers that are, the orchid blossoms. And Northern Tway Blade is for being able to access non-physical, energetic, whatever you want to call it, the subtle world, the fourth dimensional world of the angels, the devas, the plant spirits, that kind of thing, which some people can see and glimpse and capture. But it's the ability to have sort of a translation or an interpreter that says, well, this is the input that's coming from that place, and bringing it into words, bringing it into speech, bringing it into writing, being able to take that message and put it down on paper, or put it down in some way that works. And so perfect for writers that are sourcing that kind of information, perfect for artists that are wanting to bring from wherever they're bringing it through. And for the writer's question, if that's what you're writing about, if you're writing about nature and healing and these higher, less solid, things in life.
Yeah.
Because what happens to a lot of us, I've had this problem, and I know several people, and I worked with a lot of people, that you just sort of stay in that place.
Yeah.
You never bring it in, and if you bring it in, it's not to the point where anybody can understand it.
Yeah.
So,
brilliant.
So that's a nice adjunct.
Yeah, very much so. And also, interestingly, because I know you know a little bit more about it, but I just want to mention, because I know Angie Jackson from Adam and Angie for Healthlines, who are actually filming this. We're still waiting for. We know that Angie has done some Mediterranean essences,
yes.
And I gather that I heard you two talking that she also has something for hopefully with creativity, writer's block, whatever.
Yeah, 2 different ones.
Sound lovely to mix in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just found out about these last night, but there's one called Blue.
Yeah.
And the picture is a bowl of water sitting on a blue stone area with the blue sky and the blue ocean. Everything you see in the picture is different shades of blue. And she said, I knew I wanted to make a blue essence, and I needed to make it in a blue place. So she found this blue place. And so this essence is for flow. It's just getting in the flow. And Adam talks about it as catching that wave, like a surfer catches the wave and just rides it and rides it and rides it. And so it's like catching and getting back on that wave, so to speak, that you might have been on and then you fell off. So getting back on that and just flowing with that. And then the other one is prickly pear, which is a cactus.
Yeah.
And I can't remember that one as clearly, which means I probably need it. But it's very much, going back to that place of inspiration that you had, which is perfect for me, because when I wrote my third book, it was 9 months that I was just in this place of, it's heck on
focused.
relationships. It's heck on relationships.
Yes, yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I'm writing.
Yes.
But it just came through, and it was just, so in that place of that. And because of, various changes in my life and whatever different responsibilities, I'm having a difficult time getting back on that wave and getting back into that initial inspiration. And so I'm thinking I could use both of those. I could use the blue and the prickly pear.
Another one of yours jumps into mind there, though, as well,
Really?
actually, which is sticky geranium.
Oh, yeah.
Because that to me, one word, it's procrastination.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's not slightly...
No, it'd be perfect for me.
Yeah.
And it's because I find myself in my teaching recently talking about multitasking and telling people not to do it.
Yes.
Because we've
it's
learned...
It's not a buzzword anymore, is it?
Yeah, we've learned to multitask, however that came about, and get really good at doing 3 or 4 things at once. With the lack of quality then, that if we're just doing one thing at a time, we can bring more quality to it and more, fun and joy. And so this is an anti-multitasking remedy, to get back to let's just focus on one thing and just do that.
Yeah.
And there's actually a couple more in our system for that. But sticky geranium helps you gather the forces that you've split off in all these different areas and just collect your energy back in one place again and then leap forward.
Leap forward and do it, as opposed to... Because in taking it a step further, how I interpreted it and how I've used it a lot is I'll just do this.
Yeah.
And I'll just do that. So all the multitasking bits, and actually the bit that really needs to be done, you skirt around it every single time.
Exactly.
And you never get back to actually what really needs to be done. Yeah. Because you put it off and put it off and put it off.
Or, to be fair, you walk up to it and I don't have the energy to do this.
Yes.
I do that all the time with my writing, because it takes energy and focus and discipline. And if I'm scattering a lot of my available energy, and I'm getting things done.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little thing done over here, a little thing done over there, a little bit here, a little bit there. But they're not as fulfilling, those little things. Yeah. And it's saying, just, take some time, get your forces back together, pick that one thing that really needs to be done, and just go. Yeah. Boom. And
one of the remedies I like to give with sticky geranium is our remedy lycopodium.
Lycopodium.
Do you know much about lycopodium?
No, but I want to make it as an essence.
Oh, do you? The club moss?
Yeah.
Is that in Alaska?
Yes.
Oh,
all
wow.
over the place.
Oh, brilliant.
But tell me about it.
Well, lycopodium, we see it as a liver remedy. It's a huge remedy for liver.
Okay.
Helps the liver, just when we see people having a sluggish type lifestyle, and it's a really good one there. But it's also it's one around confidence, more confidence, and having the confidence to do things. So it's about, I see it with sticky geranium as indecision. Mm-hmm. Lycopodium can have indecision because they haven't got the confidence to do it.
Okay.
Lycopodium can be one of our best. If you go to a talk or a lecture, lycopodium, when they stand up, will be beautiful lecturers. Mm-hmm. But maybe you haven't seen quite what's gone on beforehand to get them there. So there's been the churning, the stomach symptoms, the rushing to the loo, and I just better go again just in case, and all this. And as soon as they stand up, their performance is perfect.
Amazing.
They are brilliant, but they put huge pressure on themselves to do that. Now we have other remedies where they're bag of nerves all the way through, but that lycopodium But lycopodium has huge sugar cravings, huge blood sugar cravings. They need to eat little and often. It can move on to all other sorts. It's a huge remedy that we use, but I like it for the indecision and the come on, here's the confidence to go ahead and do it. And the sticky geranium is almost like, and here's the,
here's the juice for it.
Yeah, to do it.
Well, no wonder I need to make it and take it. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what it comes out as an essence. But
So what's happening with your cards?
well, you're not the first to ask recently. I actually have all the photography done.
Yeah.
There's a couple that I could always improve on, but it's just a matter of taking sticky geranium and some of these remedies and getting the focus back together.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'll be the first of these various things that have been waiting in the wings. They'll be the first thing to come out.
Have you got an idea of how you want to do them?
Yeah, I'm gonna, when I go to Alaska, which will be in a couple of weeks, I have a designer up there that I work with for our printed materials and the catalog and whatnot. And she's actually designing several things for us, and I'm going to have her get my artwork, get my pictures, get them in a template,
Yes.
front of the card, back of the card, and we'll get all that done in like June.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of finding a printer and having the money and getting them done.
Yeah.
The front is just going to be the picture.
Yeah.
Just going to be the first deck will be the 72 flowers.
Yes.
In our practitioner set. And so on the front it'll just be the picture, maybe a little thin line or something, just a design line.
Yeah.
And then turn it around on the back will be, this is alder and this is what it's for, a couple lines, and then the affirmation.
Yeah,
on the back.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
you can use them intuitively, in other words.
Absolutely, use
Somebody
them for all sorts.
doesn't know them, doesn't know what they are, just pick the one that attracts you, and then they turn it over and go, oh, that's what that is.
I think if those can, knowing that the hunger I have for, I know from a lot of people who haven't got your book, the big book, they've only got the small book, and even if the cards come out, I mean, that gives you a huge tool to be able to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine just being able to use them in so many different ways in my practice. They're wonderful.
Yeah. No, that's going to happen. I mean, it's all going to happen. But that one,
on tape.
Because I have this support with this designer.
And it sounds like you have clarity.
Yeah, it's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah. Does the book have clarity?
Well, the book has been delayed for so long for two main reasons. One is me. I've been going through a lot of changes, not in the same place I was when I wrote the other books. Mm-hmm. And I kept, this is some years ago, I kept expecting, any day now I'm going to get into this place that I recognize as being a good place to work on the book and stay with that. Yeah. Just, it's been eluding me. But then I realized as well that there's so much more that needs to be said. And so it's a lot of new information, and it's a lot of information that is sort of auxiliary, like space clearing piece that needs to be brought into it, and improving the animal piece and expanding that. And so it's really going away from the previous books would have just been sort of a handbook for the remedies to much more comprehensive information about how to use them, and a lot of different information.
Fantastic.
Taking more of the information that I use on a regular basis in my teaching and in my consultations that I do. Yeah. So it'll be worth the wait, but it's
so
just
clinical, a lot of clinical evidence as such. Yeah.
Just a lot more than the other one. I mean, I didn't want to just write the other book over again, update, the remedy information, and, leave it at that. So it will have pictures of all the gems in the gem set, and then all these other chapters.
Yeah. Yeah. So the pictures will come into. Yeah.
Thanks for asking.